Hello everyone, welcome back. And today's video got a couple of things to discuss as we continue our season preview series. Today we're going to be discussing the Blackhawks and the Blues, how they finished last year, how they do this off season, and how are they shaping up to start the 2023-2024 season. We'll go to all of that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Instant Hockey Show. Now, as usual, I'm going to continue on with my season preview series, as I've been doing over the past couple of weeks. Today we've got two Central Division teams to talk about first, in the Chicago Blackhawks and the St. Louis Blues. Now we're going to talk about first how they did to finish the 2022-2023 season, how they did in the offseason. So first we're going to look at their offseason additions and their subtractions. We're going to look at their top 3 picks from the 2023 draft. We're going to look at my projected lineup for their upcoming season. And then on top of that, I'm going to give you my current predictions for the 23-24 season. Give you my projected point totals and give you my grade on how I think those teams did in the offseason. So we got the Blues and Blackhawks to talk about today. We're going to start with the Chicago Blackhawks. One of the worst teams in the league last year. Did not have very much going for them. They solved a lot of things in the 2022 offseason. Did not have very much going for them. They continued to solve pieces, getting closer and closer to the deadline. So they were a big selling team last year. They wound up finishing with a poor record of 26-49-7 for 59 points. They were the lowest team in the Central, 8th in the Central, and they were 15th in the Western Conference. They finished 36 points back of the Winnipeg Jets. So they were like a mile away from the Winnipeg Jets. They were not even close. They were one of the bottom 3 teams in the NHL, along with teams like the Columbus Blue Jackets and Anaheim Ducks. But they did win the draft lottery. They went up from 3-1, and they were able to get first overall pick. So that was a huge win for them, which we'll get to in a second. But still, a poor season for the Hawks. They didn't really have very much great NHL production, so didn't really do much. So really bad there, but the real bright side here was to get the first overall pick in this draft. So once again, not a great season last year, but still a really good outcome for them. So let's go over here to the offseason additions and losses for the Blackhawks. As you can see here, they had a little bit more losses than additions, but I think the addition side is a little bit more better than the loss side. So if you look at the losses side, they have Jonathan Toews, longtime Blackhawks top 6 center, captain of the Blackhawks, decided to step away from hockey, take a year off, evaluate how he's doing. So he's not playing this year. Even if he was going to play, he was not going to go back to the Blackhawks. So Toews, who's currently UFA, but will most likely be UFA at least until next year, has left the Hawks. They also have Austin Wagner, who's on a PTO right now with Pittsburgh, and Anders Bjork, who signed the AHL. Both also left to the Chicago Blackhawks. So a couple of bottom 6 forwards and top 6 center Jonathan Toews were the few players they lost in the forward group. Defensively, they definitely lost a couple of pieces. They lost Caleb Jones, did not qualify him as an RFA, and he went to Carolina. They lost Ian Mitchell, who was traded to Boston, as well as Alec Regula. They also lost Andreas Englund, who did really well as like a 6th, 7th defenseman in free agency to Los Angeles. They lost Alex Stalock to Anaheim in free agency. He's going to be a good third stringer there. And they also lost Anton Hudobin overseas. So not overly bad. There was not a ton of huge losses this team had. A couple of decent defensemen who can be third pair defensemen they did lose. Toews is a really good second line center, so to lose him is a pretty big blow. But besides that, I don't really think there's a huge amount of losses for this team. So definitely, the losses was not overly fantastic, but was not anything significant. But the offseason additions were fantastic. They were able to add Nick Foligno, who was a bottom 6 forward. They got him in that trade that sent Regula and Mitchell to Boston. He was a UFA. They sent him to a 1-year, $4 million deal, a little bit of an overpayment, but a decent forward who can probably play third line minutes next year. They get Corey Perry, same sort of thing. Tampa traded his rights to Chicago in exchange for a 7th round pick. 1-year, $4 million deal. They signed him. Not a bad contract. I think he should also continue to excel with the Hawks in the bottom 6 role this year. They also got Ryan Donato in free agency. Decent bottom 6 forward who probably should be able to get like third, second line minutes with the Hawks. They also got Taylor Hall in the Boston deal that sent Regula and Mitchell to Boston. really, really good top 6 forward, should continue to help be a force on the top 6, and he should definitely be playing top line minutes in the Hawks organization. And then the one here that was the number 1 overall pick, he's going to play this year, and he's probably going to be a generational talent for this team, Connor Bedard, who had a fantastic season over in the WHL, and is going to be a star with the Blackhawks starting this year. So for the Hawks, they do lose guys like Taves and a couple of decent defensemen like Regula, Mitchell, Jones, decent goalie in Stalock. But they add Hall, who's a good top-line forward. They add Foligno, Donato, Perry, who can all be good middle 6 forwards, bottom 6 forwards for that team. And they get Bedard. Bedard's a generational talent. He goes first overall, and the Hawks were lucky enough to be able to pick first overall. So in my eyes, that's a huge win for that team. So they get Bedard, who's going to be a top-line center this year. Hall, who's probably going to play with him on the top line. And then Foligno, Perry, and Donato. So the forward group, in my opinion, looks a ton better. The defense, maybe a little bit worse, given the fact that they don't have those more stable guys like Jones or Mitchell anymore. But I think they'll still be able to make do. So, in my eyes, they did fantastic offseason, especially improving that forward group. They also brought back a guy like Andreas Antonisiou, re-signed him. So, definitely, I think the Hawks did really well this offseason. The top 3 picks in the 2023 draft for the Blackhawks, obviously no surprise that their first pick was number 1 overall, first-round pick, Connor Bedard. So, that was the consensus number 1 overall pick. He's a generational talent, and I don't think there's any surprise there. The second pick in that draft was 19th overall in the first round. They selected Oliver Moore, who seems to be a good projected second, third line center eventually, who should definitely be playing really well behind Bedard. And then their third pick in this draft was second round, number 3 overall, and they were able to select Adam Gajan, who seems like he could be a goalie of the future for the Hawks. So some pretty good picks there in that draft. They had a ton of draft capital, so definitely did really well in my opinion. I think they did really well with the other picks, but you can't really go wrong if you're picking Bedard first overall in the draft. So Hawks did fantastic in my opinion. I think that's a really good draft for them. They have a really good additions and losses. So in my eyes, the Hawks had a fantastic offseason. My current projected lineup for the 23-24 season for the Chicago Blackhawks has Taylor Hall playing on the top line with Connor Bedard and Andreas Antonisiou. That's a really good top line. The second line is Philip Kurashev with Lucas Reichel and Tyler Radish. So they got Radish, Reichel, Kurashev, top second line. A really young line, but I think it could be good. The third line is Ryan Donato with Cole Gutman and Tyler Johnson. It's a pretty good third line. And the fourth line I have is Nick Foligno with Colin Blackwell and Corey Perry. So in my eyes, that's a pretty decent forward group. It's not something that I'll definitely be able to be flashy or help them get a lot of places, but it's a decent forward group. Defensively, I have Kevin Korchinski, who's a really good defensive prospect, playing with Seth Jones. I think Korchinski makes the lineup this year. I have Alex Vlasic playing with Connor Murphy. And Wyatt Kaiser playing with Jared Tenorti. I have Mrazek being the 1A in goal. I have Arvid Soderblom being the 1B in goal. And then I have Mackenzie Entwistle, Jason Dickinson, and Nikita Zaitsev as the spares. So Hawks definitely have a lot of really good players. It's not a fantastic team, but this is a lot better than the team they had last year. So I could definitely see some major improvements from this team, especially with Bedard being on the team. So in my eyes, at this current point in time, I don't have them finishing too much farther ahead than the 59 points they had last year, but I do have them having a little bit of a better season. I have them finishing with a 32-40-10 record for 72 points, which is 13 more than they had last year. I think that's a pretty good point total, especially given the fact they're still a team who's looking to rebuild. That's 8th in the Central and 14th in the Western Conference. So a little bit better than last year, but I don't expect them to be too much better. So I think Bedard, the additions they had in forward group, they will help them become a little bit of a better team this year, but I'm just not exactly sure that they'll be able to be a fantastically huge, over 500, compete for playoffs. So in my eyes, the Hawks had a fantastic offseason. They were gifted Bedard by winning the draft lottery. Their forward group has improved drastically. If some of their young guys can step up on the defense, I really do like that. Goaltending-wise, not the best in the NHL, but they should be able to make do this year. So I think there was a couple other ways. Like I think they could have improved their defense if they wanted, maybe improve their goaltending. They didn't really do that, so I'm going to give them a B+. I think Game Bedard was a fantastic addition. That team looks a lot more scary now. They also got a couple of really good prospects in the draft. This team looks set for the future. On top of that, they improved their forward group, even if it's just in the short term, because Hall, Donato, Perry, Foligno, they all didn't sign anything more than 2 years, so they're almost likely going to be gone the next couple of years. But you got Hall, you got Foligno, you got Perry, you've got Donato. There's a lot of good talent there on the forward group. So in my opinion, that forward group improved a ton. The defense is going to have some hiccups this year, especially with a lot of young guys probably coming in. The goaltending, it's probably still going to be iffy with Mrazek and Soderblom in there. But in my eyes, a B+. They definitely did really good this year. They set themselves up for the future. They have a lot of good young prospects. And in my eyes, they're going to be a bit better of a team this year. So in my eyes, a B+ for the Hawks. And I think they'll definitely do a little bit better than this upcoming season, getting to 72 points. Going over to the St. Louis Blues. Once again, not a team who made the playoffs last year. I think that was a bit of a surprise. A lot of people, including myself, had the Blues making the playoffs. And they did not have a really good start to the season. Sold off a lot of UFAs at the deadline and continued to be downhill. So they finished the season with a 37, 38, and 7 record for 81 points. That was good for 6th in the Central, 12th in the Western Conference, and they finished 14 points behind the Winnipeg Jets. So just a tad bit under 500. Not a fantastic season. I think they really did better a little bit in the second half after they started to get some of the games under their feet, but still, it was not a fantastic season from the Blues. So in my eyes, a really bad season. They have the ability to bounce back, but will they is the big question mark. So in my eyes, a really bad season for the Blues, and they're hoping to bounce back this year. But we'll see what they did in the offseason first. As you can see here is the additions and losses that they had this offseason. The losses, they had a pretty big amount of losses, but nothing was overly significant. They lost Tyler Pitlick, who went to New York in free agency. They lost Josh Leivo, who I think just signed overseas. They lost Martin Frk, who also signed overseas. They lost Matthew Highmore, who signed in Ottawa. They lost Logan Brown, who signed in Tampa. They lost Steven Santini, who signed in Los Angeles. And then they lost Thomas Greiss, who was the backup goalie last year and decided to retire this year. So not too much overly significant losses this offseason. The additions, they get Mackenzie McEachran, who was a good depth forward for the Carolina Hurricanes last year, has familiarity with the St. Louis Blues organization. They traded for Kevin Hayes from the Philadelphia Flyers, decent second, third line center. They brought back Oscar Sundqvist after signing him, decent bomb 6 forward. And then they also bring in Wyatt Kalynuk, who could definitely be a decent depth defenseman. So in my eyes, there's not a whole bunch of additions or losses for this team here. They lost a couple of depth pieces. They also lose backup goalie Thomas Greiss. They add a couple of depth pieces and guys like Sundqvist, Hayes, McEachran, and really that's all that they've done. So we heard all season long they wanted to shake up their defense because that defense was not good last year. We heard all season long they might want to add another top 9 forward to improve their forward group. We heard all season that maybe they're going to try and get another backup goaltender to help Binnington, and they didn't really do any of that. They lost a couple of pieces, they added a couple of pieces back. It wasn't that big of a deal. So in my eyes, the Blues did all right, but they did not do fantastic. I think if they were to have used one of their first-round picks to trade for something, had they been able to improve their defensive core, I would be a little more confident in them. But at this point in time, I don't really see the team having a ton of more success than they had last year. So if you look at their top 3 picks in the 2023 draft, they had 3 first-round picks. So their top 3 picks were all in the first round. The first-round pick, their own, number 10th overall, they selected center Dalibor Dvorsky, who should be a good second, third line center. Their second first-round pick, number 25 overall, was Otto Stenberg, who should also be a good third line center eventually. And then their third first-round pick, number 29th overall, they selected left defenseman Theo Lindstein, who should eventually be a good second, third pair defenseman. So some pretty good picks there from the St. Louis Blues in 2023 draft. Definitely a lot of draft capital. And even though they had 3 first-round picks and a lot of people thought someone was going to be traded, they wound up keeping most of them. So a really good job there for the Blues to do well on all those draft picks. My current projected lineup for the St. Louis Blues at this point in time, I have Verana playing on the top line with Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou. I have Zachary Bolduc playing on the second line with Braden Shen and Pavel Buchnevich. I have Kevin Hayes on the third line with Kasperi Kapanen and youngster Jake Neighbors. And I have Brendan Saad playing on the fourth line with Oscar Sundqvist and Alexei Toropchenko. I have Peronovich and Pareko playing on line 1 on the defensive end. I have pair 2 being Krug and Falk, and pair 3 being Leddy and Tyler Tucker. I have Binnington being the 1A goalie next year. I have Yoel Hofer being the 1B goalie next year. And then they have Sammy Blais, Marcos Candela, and Robert Bertuzzo being the spare. So a decent forward group. I have guys like Bolduc, Neighbors, Peronovich making the lineup next year. Hofer is the backup goaltender. So definitely I think this team was poised to add some youth to their lineup. So hopefully they'll be able to see some of these younger guys take steps forward next year. Hopefully some of these other guys will be able to bounce back. My current projected point total for the 23-24 season for the St. Louis Blues, I have them having a 36-39-7 record for only 79 points. 7th in the Central, 13th in the Western Conference, 2 less points than last year. I know this is a really low point total for the Blues, and I'm not exactly sure if they will finish this low. I could see them easily finish higher and above 500, but I have no confidence right now in that defense. Binnington's play ever since winning the Stanley Cup has gone down, and last year I think he showed, especially with having a more of a starter role with Grace as the backup, he's not ready for that right now, and I'm not sure if Hofer's going to be able to play 30 to 40 games next year. So I really do have my doubts about Binnington and net. That defense did not improve at this point in time. Maybe it does before a season starts, but at this point in time, that defense has not improved. Forward group looks pretty good, but I'm not sure they'll get the offense they've wanted to, and I don't think guys like Hayes is going to replace production of guys like O'Reilly and Tarasenko. So, in my eyes, I have them finishing with 39 points. That may be a little bit low for some of you guys, but in my eyes, I think that's the right move. The offseason, I'm giving them a C+. I think they did all right this offseason. It was not a fantastic offseason by any means. If you look at their additions, subtractions, they added Kevin Hayes. Everything else was basically depth moves. So in my eyes, not a really bad offseason. They did really well with the draft capital. They got a lot of picks for the future. So they're looking pretty all right. So I think just above average with a C+. But definitely, Hayes is a decent player. But is he really going to change the offense? No. And then their big things I said they need to do defense. Maybe add another experienced goaltender. They didn't do anything of that sort this year. So in my eyes, Blues, C+, not fantastic, but a doable offseason so far. And I think that this team will finish right now 79 points and one of the lower teams in the Western Conference. So definitely, love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. Does Chicago warrant a B+ rating? Does the Blues warrant a C+ rating? Do you think the Hawks and Blues will both make playoffs? Do you think, like I think, they'll both be the bottom dwelling teams in the Central Division? Definitely. Do you also think they've had a decent offseason, good offseason, bad offseason? Definitely. Love to hear your thoughts down in the comments on what you think about the Blues and Blackhawks. That's all I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video, and if you really like it, remember to subscribe down below. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So definitely check that out. I'll leave a link to that in the description below, and I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.